In the first chapter, he gives the characteristics of devotional service, pure devotional service. And following that, the first stages of devotion are discussed, where he discusses the definition of sadhana bhakti, mainly Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and sadhana bhakti. And following that, then he describes in the next chapter the eligibility of a candidate for devotional service. So I just want to read the first paragraph from there. On account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, so that's what Prabhupada says. And I wanted to read also particularly what Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, even if one has a little taste for the topic of bhakti, he can understand it. He who tries to understand bhakti by dry logic cannot understand it because logic is insubstantial. Then Jiva Goswami comments on that. He says, something else should be said concerning those who have no taste for bhakti. That is expressed by the words kim cha. Ruchi or taste in this verse means taste for scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam that present the true nature of bhakti. This taste arises through previous impressions. And just one more verse. This verse, he later speaks in the section of Samanya Bhakti. He says, the person who has developed faith in serving the Lord by impressions arising from previous association with devotees, who is not too attached to material objects, and who is not too detached, is qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti. So in this verse, there's a specific word, ati bhagena. So Jiva Goswami comments on that word ati bhagena, and he says, ati bhagena is basically extreme good fortune. And what is that ati bhagena? That ati bhagena is by distinctive impressions arising from association with devotees. So Prabhupada describes how the whole beginning of devotional service is attraction for devotional service. And then he says it starts from previous impressions. And then it seems like a circular thing. You know, there's attraction, and then, you know, based on that, devotional service grows. But then where does it all start? It starts with getting the causeless mercy of a devotee somehow or the other. And then, it grows like that. So so for me, the way this connected is that if we can always remember that where bhakti starts from and how bhakti grows, because to increase the eligibility not just for entering into bhakti but also in an ongoing manner, that eligibility can be increased in an ongoing manner only by the mercy of devotees and not some other way. We were also discussing when during Nectar of Instruction, just like this roadmap, I had this figure of how, we start with uncontrolled senses and so on, and then there's things to do and things not to do, Rupa Goswami describes. And then there's 3 verses focused just on relationships with devotees. And only then he speaks of chanting, and then, Raganuga platform from 8th verse onwards. So for me, it just seems very clear that unless relationship with devotees is proper, one cannot actually chant the holy name properly, and one cannot enter into the higher realms of bhakti. So what I was thinking of is just when we can keep that goal in the forefront, then the things that may happen in our interactions with devotees take a very different perspective, as opposed to not having this picture of where are we going and how does it all start. When the goal is not in the perspective, then I become the center somehow, and I'm calculating everything in terms of mine, and I'm looking everything with a material vision. Drishtaya svabhava janiter vapushascha doshair, that we're just looking everything with material vision and not with the spiritual vision, which comes from having this clear sense of goal. So I also had a little exercise, if you will, I wanted devotees to maybe think about or participate in over this weekend. Because something that we can all see is that when we have some kind of negative thought or just some friction, some tension with another devotee, the moment there is that kind of envious feeling within our heart, then the heart just seems to contract. We can all actually do it, just think of a negative thought of a devotee and you can just feel your heart kind of literally contracting. And, Krishna wants to give, acharyas want to give, the holy name wants to give, but our heart is closed through that and we're not able to access the mercy of the holy name. So the exercise I wanted to invite you all to consider doing over the weekend is just for this weekend, if you can kind of really try to not have any negativity towards any devotee. So a little exercise can be that every time some negative thought comes, and it comes, actually when we become aware of it, when I was doing this exercise, I realized, wow, in an hour I can count 20 times, or it's I don't last very long. There's just some or the other thought that just comes, which is not very favorable in a sense. So just by doing the exercise, we actually become aware of how much we do it, even unknowingly. It's not very gross, it's not externally seen even, but at a very subconscious level we tend to have this subtle criticism of devotees at one level or another. So one time, at one place they did this exercise of having these 5, they have these friendship bands and stuff like that, wear these 5 bands, and every time you think of something negative, put it on the other hand, and then we realize how many times we have to actually keep changing from one hand to the other through the whole day. But I don't have bands with me. But you can take maybe an index card. We can arrange for index cards. And you can just mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and, just notice how the mind goes. And if we can even try to do that, it'll have a very powerful effect on our sadhana as well as relationships. And perhaps we can also share at the end of the weekend, Maharaj, maybe on Sunday or something, after the disciples' meeting, that what was the effect of just trying to very conscientiously root out this tendency for criticism, just based on the realization that we cannot go anywhere without the mercy of devotees. At every step of our Krishna consciousness, that's where we get bhakti from. And there's actually no two ways about it. At every step we need that, to enter into bhakti and to go from one step to the other. So that's just a simple message I wanted to share this morning.
You read very quickly Rupa Goswami's, Prabhupada's, Rupa Goswami's, and Jiva Goswami's commentary on a few points. And because you're familiar with those points, it said something to you, but it's new to hear that specific language that they used. Could you summarize what those messages were that impacted you and inspired you to share those with us? What's the message that they're giving?
Yeah. So we all know, in a sense, that bhakti starts from a bhakta, a madhyamadikari bhakta, when he gives bhakti. But when I was studying this section recently, and also the Nectar of Instruction, the point very, very deeply impressed on me, particularly when I was reading Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, within which is Jiva Goswami's commentary also, the way he describes about how it all starts is impressions from the past. And what do those impressions, and these impressions come somehow by the association with great devotees, or even Madhyamadikari Bhaktas. Doesn't have to be like super elevated devotees, but from a Bhakta.
Are those impressions the same as Yata, Sukriti,
Yeah.
the way that he speaks about it?
Yeah.
Accumulation of devotional service through association. Some impressions.
Yeah. So some impressions, and that then translates into some taste or attraction for Shastra. That's like the specific quality of attraction that Rupa Goswami describes. That just taste for hearing the Shastra, or the messages of Krishna Katha, basically. So that's how the association of devotees gives us that taste, somehow in the... Yeah.
That taste is just another use of the word ruchi that's different than, a different use of the word than that really high one.
Yes.
That's beyond the stage of anartha nivritti.
Yes.
Comes ruchi. So this is another use of the same term, taste for hearing Krishna Katha.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
It's more like attraction.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So keep going. So what's the circular thing that you were seeing from that?
Because it's described, like Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Devotion too, how it usually begins from previous life. And we need to have some attraction. That's the eligibility for devotional services, for some attraction. And then it says previous life. So then how did it start, previous life? It started with this, with the mercy of a devotee.
Then the conclusion is, we need the mercy of the devotee at every step.
Yes.
That's the conclusion.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So what my question was is that you were saying to notice how many times you're having these thoughts and you're switching the bands or making the marks on the card. But is there another step you can take to kind of help to, alleviate that or make it, less? Like, what is the...
alleviate.
Like to make it so that, because so we're noticing, so the process you're talking is so noticing just how often you're having these sort of thoughts or emotions, but then what can you do to make it less?
Yeah, so she's asking that You asked us to notice how many times we have these negative thoughts towards devotees. So is there another step you can give where, what can I do about it? So when I get these thoughts, what can I do about it? So the step is actually, I think the first step is actually recognition. Like they say, if we know the problem, we already have 50% of the solution. So the very first step is to even recognize that I'm doing it so much. And that is one reason that my heart is closing in some way, and that is one reason that I'm not able to have loving relationships or go further in my devotional service at some level. And it's so to just even acknowledge that, and then recognize that this is not something very conducive. So trying to focus on more on what is really wanted. And another intermediate step can be of perhaps sharing our heart with someone. If we have someone we can share with, because that support will also help. Yeah.
Sometimes I hear this question. The mind is doing something, but the soul is not the mind. The soul is different than the mind. So the mind is running hither and thither, and due to material contamination and thinking something. So we know that we're contaminated, but the soul actually being truly situated apart from these things. Sometimes the question comes, how seriously should I identify with that particular emotion that's manifesting in the mind? Recognizing it and knowing this is a problem due to material contamination, I need to maybe intensify my practices to purify the mind. But how much should we identify with that emotion? Because sometimes we allow our identification with our emotional states to deviate us from the actual positive, let's say, attainment. So how do we deal with this type of, I don't know what the word is, dichotomy, or does my question make sense?
Yeah, your question is, how much do we allow ourselves to...
How much do we identify with our emotional states, which are highly conditioned? With transcendental knowledge, we know that we're not those various emotional states. Mm-hmm. So how much consideration should we give to that when that's happening in our mind? Because the tendency is to get into the emotional situation, and then we get totally deviated from maybe the spiritual practices that will actually purify the mind of such horrible contaminations.
Mm-hmm. It's bound to happen because we are identified with the mind in our conditioned state. So in a sense, we do get carried away, but the transcendental knowledge is meant to help us, bring us back on track, really. That was something that I was speaking about, having the goal in perspective, and that kind of just like brings things in perspective, and we don't get lost in the little details or just like the emotional loops that we kind of go through. So for me, something that I've been meditating on in my life is just to have that clear sense of goal, and also like we've been talking about this in our classes of the purpose of this creation really is to reclaim us back. And that for me, just to have that meditation, going about things day to day, it just puts things in perspective, and then I'm not putting that same kind of weight. There's not that same kind of identification with that thing, and then I'm able to see like a more objective view or more like a bird's eye view, and suddenly, all that intensity just seems to like decrease, and we can, go forward from there. Yes.
Just a response to this discussion. It's a nice discussion. Jai Jagannath is speaking, as you properly said, detachment through transcendental knowledge. And then you replied, well, goal. Mm-hmm. And goal is more than detachment through transcendental knowledge. The goal is way beyond that. But, there's the goal, and then as you said, there's where we are. We're not there. And you're then, by maintaining focus on the goal, these things become diminished. The identifying with and getting all involved in the emotional states and all that stuff, the perceptions and feelings and stuff, material stuff. Seems to me that, like the discussion we were having about a spiritual goal in relation to chanting, because there's other features that are delivering us, but like the mercy of devotees, but the mercy of the holy name. If the heart is constricted because of a bad thought, or because of some emotional state going on because of our conditioning, the heart becomes constricted and we can't access the mercy of the holy name. So then, this discussion is about what to do about that condition and your goal. So the goal is shelter in the holy name. That's our primary means of deliverance for this age. So shelter in the holy name. Are you sharing with us that's the goal? And connected to the goal is we have openness in our relationships with devotees, at least from the platform of transcendental knowledge, seeing the other person as a spirit soul and not, the words they just spoke or the actions they just performed, but as spirit soul. And inside that spirit soul, there's love for Krishna also. And then there's all this other stuff covering the soul. Mm-hmm. So by transcendental knowledge, seeing the spiritual reality so that my heart can remain open to the holy name and properly deal with that spirit soul, whatever the condition is. Something like that?
Yeah.
That's our challenge in relationship-wise and, the mind-wise. So, because transcendental knowledge is nice, but it's dry. So, something that's, it's going back to this other thing, taste, because that's not dry. Taste sounds juicy. Mm-hmm. Taste for hearing. And then hearing goes nowhere if we don't apply it. Like the example of this exercise. So that's a nice exercise. But if you do the exercise, you'll get a wow experience that says, wow, how many times my conditioned mind goes there. Dushtamana. And then bring the mind back to where it belongs. It helps to fix the goal. So that's how it can be useful to see, although it's not me, it's closing my heart's access to the... So transcendental knowledge says that, but then what do I do?
My attention was going to the set of verses in Bhagavatam, the first canto, second chapter, starting with Shushusho Shraddhadanasya, as we spoke. And there's a whole series. It takes one from whatever condition to Bhidyate Hridaya Grantis, Chidyate Sarvasamshaya, Kshiyate Chasya Karmani. Drushta Evatmanishware, that clear vision of being separate from the emotions or the mind is I guess a gift, that vision is a gift. So how to is, as the emotions are taking us for a ride, somewhere the strength of a higher relationship that keeps us going on the track of bhakti, the sadhana bhakti. Unless we have that higher relationship, then there is nothing to hold on to. And so one is again and again in the same, I guess, loop. So that was where my attention was going.
It's really humbling to sit in front of His Divine Grace and all the exalted devotees. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Rom Padaswaminiti Namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. The topic of discussion was Vaishnava Ninda or Vaishnava Aparadha. So I choose from 9th canto, text 68. Sadvo hridayam mayyam sadhunam hridayam tvaham madanyat tena jananti naham tepyo managapi. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. Purport. Since Durvasa Muni wanted to chastise Maharaj Ambarisha, it is to be understood that he wanted to give pain to the heart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the Lord says, Sadvo Hridayam Mahyam, the pure devotee is always within the core of my heart. The Lord's feelings are like those of a father who feels pain when his child is in pain. Therefore, offences at the lotus feet of a devotee are serious. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has very strongly recommended that one not commit any offence at the lotus feet of a devotee. Such offences are compared to a mad elephant because when a mad elephant enters a garden, it causes devastation. Therefore, one should be extremely careful not to commit offences at the lotus feet of a pure devotee. Actually, Maharaj Ambarisha was not at all at fault. Durvasa Muni unnecessarily wanted to chastise him on flimsy grounds. Maharaj Ambarisha wanted to complete the Ekadashi Parana as a part of devotional service to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he drank a little water. But although Durvasa Muni was a great mystic Brahmana, he did not know what is what. That is the difference between a pure devotee and a so-called learned scholar of Vedic knowledge. The devotees, being always situated in the core of the Lord's heart, surely get all instructions directly from the Lord, as confirmed by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita 10:11. Tesham evanukampartam aham ajnanam cham tehamaha nashamyam atma bhavasto jnanadhipena bhashvata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. The devotee does not do anything not sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. As it is said, Vaishvanera kriya mudra vignena na bhujaya. Even the most learned or experienced person cannot understand the movements of a Vaishnava, a pure devotee. No one therefore should criticize a pure Vaishnava. A Vaishnava knows his own business. Whatever he does is precisely right because he is always guided by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of the 10 offenses, it was said the first is to blaspheme the devotees is the greatest offense. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita also Krishnadas Kaviraj says that one who offends a devotee, not only him, but those who are associated with him would have to face the the consequences. Just like when Nityananda Prabhu was traveling, and when he comes to Ramchandrakant and he asks him for shelter for his all the associates who are traveling with him, and Ramchandrakant offends him by showing him the cow shed. And then after that, there was a complete... he has to face a lot of consequences. Ramchandrakant has to face a lot of consequences because of that offense. And even when Haridas Thakur was visiting the Mujamdar family, actually he was going there to see Raghunath Das. There was this learned scholar, Gopal Chakravarti, and he was a very learned scholar. So when Haridas Thakur arrives there, and then he says, the easy way to get liberated is just to chant the holy names of the Lord. Gopal Chakravarti, offends Haridas Thakur. We have been reading Vedas and all these things, and we didn't realize how to go back. And you claim that just chanting the holy names you can go back. And if that is right, I would actually cut off my nose. And later, because of that offense, he actually acquires leprosy, and then his nose actually gets cut off. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shows by example, even if it is from his own family, just like Sachi Mata, when she offends Advaita Acharya, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's brother actually takes sannyasa, and then she actually, in her mind, she would offend Advaita Acharya. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows this, he would tell his mother that you would never go back to Godhead because you offended a devotee of the Lord. And then the only the atonement for this is you have to take the dust of Advaita Acharya. So he shows that even he wouldn't spare even his family members.
Hare Krishna. What would happen if you, unknowingly offended a pure devotee of the Lord? Commit an offense unknowingly.
First of all, there is a guilt. You would feel within yourself that you have offended that particular person. You would have that guilt, and knowing that, the best of action would be to just ask for forgiveness from the devotee.
Little assist. Prabhupada was asked the same question, and his reply was, therefore we offer the following prayer every day. Panchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo nam. Because his question is unknowingly. And if it's something unknowingly, there's not a sense of guilt. You know that story from Bhakti Ratnakar of Rupa Goswami offending the Brahmana that was passing by. Rupa Goswami didn't feel a sense of guilt because he didn't know how the man had taken his laughter. He did experience a problem, mild compared to our problems, but because there was, there's a reaction. So, but he wasn't feeling guilt. But and the prayer is not a rubber stamp. It's we enter into the mood of the prayer, offering our respects to all the devotees of the Lord. So even if unknowingly I've made some offense, we have a remedy done with sincerity properly.
I was appreciating her reference because it's a very personal reason for not offending devotees. It's a little bit more impersonal, but I think practical still. Because we deal with daily circumstances and we may forget. So it's something for my application. Basically, I feel the reason why we offend any living being is out of envy. Right? There's some feeling of defensive or whatever. I don't like that for some reason. And that envy is actually our envy towards Krishna, because Krishna is the source of all of these things, what to speak of his devotees, everything else as well. So if we can cultivate that meditation, at least we actually want to be devotees of Krishna, and these are Krishna's devotees and Krishna's everything, then whatever I'm feeling inside, like this issue of us identifying with those feelings, it is actually our sense of envy towards Krishna that makes those things happening. So we don't have to be depressed in like a worldly sense, but we can recognize I have work to do in my relationship with Krishna and go back to the focus on that as a solution to the issue. And just recognize that that's the eternal problem that we're dealing with, and we just have to keep moving forward with it. That's one inspiration that I had about how to work with that. But I very much appreciated your simple-hearted focus on how we can avoid this towards our feelings towards devotees like that.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mataji, for the nice examples. But I was not clear about how association with the devotee who commits offenses, the person who is associating with that devotee gets the reaction. And it's very bewildering to I heard this for the first time, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining that not only the person who commits offenses will get a reaction, but the person who is associating with that person. And I'm not worried about I associating with someone, I'm worried about the other side. Devotees who are associating with me will get the reaction because I commit so many offenses. So I'm worried from the other side that devotees associate with me and they will get the reaction for something which I'll do. So that is not clear.
Just. Just chant. Yes. Hearing, more and more cultivating, more hearing would be you give them your association first.
You can say, if you think you got it bad, look out for me. Keep a safe distance. High toxicity over here. One who is, according to the teaching of Rupa Goswami, one who is striving to become free from anya abhilas, I'm not there, but striving to become free from that, specifically jnana and karma, and positively following the path of perfected souls, like Rupa Goswami, one who is cultivating sadhana bhakti according to the teachings of Rupa Goswami and looking to his example, and like this message of having a goal, become a follower of Rupa Goswami, then the offenses that one carries within one's mind and beyond, they're being cleansed. So I trying to follow Rupa Goswami, I beg for the forgiveness of the Vaishnavas, whose association I require to go further. Staying home isn't going to work. I need association of devotees, and I beg for the mercy of those devotees, their merciful nature, that they forgive my shortcomings and my weaknesses, and let me redouble my effort to properly follow Rupa Goswami and cultivate according to the path that he's given. Then you can come to the temple. Who's next?
Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My thoughts are going to Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. How he was encouraged by Lord Brahma to speak to Nrsingadev. And he had a very exalted mood of feeling humble. And but he still said, I'll with my full heart, Sarvatmana, Mahi Granami Yatha Manisham. So however I can, with whatever endowments I've been given, I'm going to serve Nrsingadev. Speak about the glories of Nrsingadev. So in that, trying to follow in his footsteps. So I wanted to share 4 things that came to mind. I was thinking about this topic. One is the source of Vaishnava Ninda, from personal experience as well. The second was how the relationship with one's spiritual master has a profound effect on that particular quality or not, like Nityananda Prabhu was just mentioning. The third was, having a good sense that we don't have a full picture of things in our association, in our relationships, or in our understandings of another devotee. And if there's time to talk about a little bit about example of giving feedback, when we want to share feedback with another devotee, the mood of doing so and the vision of that's required to do so. So the first part was the root cause. I was reading the Japa book recently that Burijan Prabhu mentions Vaishnava Ninda or Sadhu Ninda comes from pride, is born of pride, and is inflamed by envy. So, and I was thinking that when we approach Krishna consciousness with the mood of trying to gain knowledge, a repercussion of that is pride. And I'd like to read a little bit of Nectar of Devotion, which really spoke to me some time ago, but then I recently read it again. It was fantastic. So Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada writes, this is chapter 14, Devotional Qualifications. Some scholars recommend that knowledge and renunciation are important factors for elevating oneself to devotional service. But actually that is not a fact. Actually, the cultivation of knowledge or renunciation which are favorable for achieving a footing in Krishna consciousness may be accepted in the beginning, but ultimately they may also come to be rejected. For devotional service is dependent on nothing other than the sentiment or the desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity. And this is the sentence especially I wanted to highlight. It is the opinion of the expert devotees that mental speculation, or that, you could say that, desire for knowledge which gets the intelligence all revved up, and the artificial austerities of yoga practice may be favorable for becoming liberated from material contamination, but they will also make one's heart harder and harder. And that they will not help at all in the progress of devotional service. So the quality of pride and envy is the source, like Ashray Prabhu was saying, for Vaishnava Ninda. And it comes from, approaching devotional service with the head rather than with the heart. So, a nice example of this in Chaitanya Charitamrita is Ramachandra Puri. And let me read I'm going to read the summary of that chapter. It's the 8th chapter of Antilila. I have it here. So this chapter describes the history of the Lord's dealing with Ramachandra Puri. Although Ramachandra Puri was one of the disciples of Madhavendra Puri, he was influenced by dry Mayavadis, speculation. And therefore he criticized Madhavendra Puri, his own spiritual master. Therefore Madhavendra Puri accused him of being an offender and rejected him. Prabhupada writes, because Ramachandra Puri had been rejected by his spiritual master, he became concerned only with fault-finding in others and advised them according to dry Mayavada philosophy. For this reason, he was not very respectful to the Vaishnavas, and later he became so fallen that he began criticizing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his eating. Hearing his criticism, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reduced his eating. But after Ramachandra Puri left Jagannath Puri, the Lord resumed his usual behavior. So, Ramachandra Puri was an example of, trying to use his intelligence to understand stuff and perceive stuff, and he fell into the pit. And pretty badly, too. He offended the Lord himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was a wonderful thing that this pastime is being described to glorify how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received that criticism with humility. He just paid obeisances to Ramachandra Puri, accepted the criticism, said to his servant, from tomorrow onwards, make sure that I get only 1/4 of what I've been eating. So, Prabhupada said that if a person is rejected by the spiritual master, they will naturally tend to fault-find. And the opposite is true. If one can be fully accepted by the spiritual master, then their tendency to fault-find is not there. The case in point is Prahlad Maharaj again, where his own father was, doing all kinds of nonsense, but he had no envious feeling. His heart was not at all hard in any sort of way towards his father. So, the verse I'm thinking of is, he says, Evam janam nipatitam prabhavahi kupe kama bhikama manuya prapata prasangat kritvatmasat surashina bhagavan grahita soham katam nuvisrajet avabhritya sevam. Kritvatmasat surashina bhagavan grahita, that this wonderful personality, Narada Muni, has accepted me and he has given me, he's infused. I remember Jai Jagannath Prabhu mentioning this in Gita Nagari. He infused me with the qualities that he had. So, how can I give up his service? So because of his relationship with the spiritual master, Prahlad Maharaj's heart became so soft that he had love for his own father and prayed. When Nrsingadev wanted to offer him a benediction, his first request was, please deliver my father. No sense of criticism. So, for me, that's very inspiring. And it makes sense too, because if you want to please the spiritual master, you don't want to do anything that, or you want to please Krishna, you don't want to do anything that would disturb them, like Mataji's quote, right? Krishna gets disturbed if you offend his devotees. So that's a protection. To the degree we have a relationship with those who we seek shelter from, that will check us from doing something outside of Vaishnava interactions with one another. And then the third point I wanted to mention was about how we don't really have a full picture of things. Two stories came to mind, one in Bhagavatam, one contemporary story, but I'll tell the one in the Bhagavatam. King Chitraketu, when Parvati accused him for, insulting Lord Shiva, he didn't. First of all, he didn't take any offense, but he went down to her and said, please understand that I did not have any intention of, offending Lord Shiva, offending you. All I wanted to do was I was having a friendly relationship with him. And so he then circumambulated her, accepted the offense, and went away. So she didn't have a full picture of what was going on in the exchange. All she saw was that exchange. And for whatever reason, made a conclusion that Chitraketu was offending my husband. So like that, we may not have a good picture of personalities around us and who they are and why they do what they do. Many people are driven by various aspects of, various previous impressions, and also sometimes people are driven by the core quality of devotion, and we don't know it. We see it as material because karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. We're bound by this view of seeing things based on our own perceptions. So then, but there are certain circumstances when we do have a clear idea that a certain person, maybe a friend or someone, a dear person, is going through some difficult circumstance, or they may be, going off the path and have these, we see some fault basically in someone that we know. How do we deal with it? So I'd like to read one of the beginning verses of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna addresses Arjuna. We recently read this, and it's so nice because the way Krishna addresses Arjuna is the following way. He says, Klebhyam masmagam aparta naitatva upapadyate kshudram hridaya dorbalyam tvaktotishta parantapa. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. So that's pretty strong feedback. But he didn't tell Arjuna that you are impotent. He said, don't yield to this degrading impotence. In other words, he saw of course Krishna, sees a distinction between Arjuna and the influence of ignorance that was over him. And so Krishna wanted to because of his affection for his friend, he wanted to get him out of that struggle that he was having with the mode of ignorance. So like that, the requisite qualities that are required to give feedback to another person is one, the clear vision, at least to whatever degree we have it, the distinction between the soul and the covering of the soul. And the second is the relationship. Krishna has such a wonderful, friendly relationship with Arjuna that he could speak to him in that way. So both are required, that we have that vision as well as a relationship where the other person can accept that kind of feedback. And Hare Krishna. Thank you.
I had a question about this knowledge point, because oftentimes we do hear if we approach for knowledge, then it will lead to negative results, or it's not just by quoting the Shastras that's devotion, it's something else. But our acharyas do make a distinction between like ordinary knowledge, Gyan, and Shuddha Gyan, which is composed of Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. So I was wondering if I was also thinking about Sarvabhaumatacharya's exchange with Gopinathacharya, and Gopinathacharya tells Sarvabhaumatacharya, you can't understand because you don't have the mercy of the Lord. So Sarvabhaumatacharya replies, well, what's the proof that you got the mercy of the Lord? And to that, Gopinathacharya says, Vastu Tattva Gyana Hai Kripate Pramane. I have Vastu Tattva Gyan. That is the pramana for my having received the mercy of the Lord. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Should I say that part over? Okay. So there's a distinction between Gyan, it seems, that the type of Gyan that leads to pride and the mental speculation and so on.
Yeah.
And then like pure knowledge, or Vastu Tattva Gyan, like Gopinathacharya says, which seems to be leading to pure Krishna conscious attainment. So I was wondering if we can discuss a distinction between the two, so that we don't misunderstand that receiving Sambandha Abhidheya Prayojan is going to actually, steer us off the road.
Depends how we approach. My quick response is depends how we approach it. If we approach it for the purpose, depends on the motivation. If we're approaching it for the purpose of, like Maharaj usually says, filling our information basket, right? Then it will lead to pride. But if the approach is this knowledge is being provided to me mercifully by Krishna and his representatives for the purpose of pulling me out of material existence, just like Prahlad Maharaj. Evam janam nipatitam prabhavai, out of this blind well that's full of snakes. If that's the mood, then that knowledge has a very purifying effect. He starts to gain the qualities of the spiritual master.
So it's not the knowledge.
It's the relationship, it's the bhakti. Yeah. You know that, Brahman.
Well, this point comes up a lot. I get concerned about myself, to be frank, because, I like to read a lot, and I like to quote a lot of verses.
Yeah.
The more the better, that's like my attitude. And then, if it's not so many verses, okay, still a nice discussion, but I could have did better, And I don't feel that my attitude is so much like I'm going to fill my information basket, but there's so much nuances in it that provides a kind of taste. Like when Dravida Prabhu comes and, he's just streaming off verses and, you feel like, wow, this is ecstatic, and you get a taste from that.
Sure.
So I was just wanting to remove the ambiguity about the knowledge point. It's not just like knowledge that's really the cause of the contamination, but maybe it's the individual and his attitude toward it that.
Arjun, you quoted the verse, from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna was speaking to Arjuna very frankly, giving him feedback. Supposing Arjuna wasn't in the right frame of mind to receive the feedback, or supposing we're in a situation where, as you said, depending upon the relationship, we're offering some feedback, and the intention is to assist the person. And sometimes it's mild, and sometimes it's medium, and sometimes it's strong, but we're giving feedback, for the purpose of, in the relationship that we have with the individual, to, out of kindness, to help them, and they take it the wrong way. What to do?
You addressed this.
You're the speaker.
A few days ago in St. Louis.
So, what did I say?
That's the tough question. You said, I remember you saying this, that it's so nice when they accept it, when they actually recognize that you're coming from a place of well-wishing. I'm not going to, I can't remember more than that because I was at the back and I wasn't fully attentive because I was with Gopinath. But I'll just share from what I've heard from you in other situations of life. And just practical, I guess, in my interactions with Prabhu and in his advising me on how to mentor devotees. So, if there isn't that strength of relationship, I mean, we have to be completely, like you said, we have to be completely in tune with the person as much as possible. And so if we have a wrong reading, is your question, then what to do after that? Is your question before or after?
It's not necessarily a wrong reading. I'll help you, and remember what Nityananda Pran said yesterday about a situation where, not necessarily being very strong, but he just held a certain position, and held a certain position, and held a certain position, and held a certain, and something like that, and gradually. So, we don't want to put the relationship at risk, because that's the rope that can help both of us. We don't want our heart to close or their heart to close. It's something to do with being trustworthy, because we were speaking about that yesterday. Being trustworthy is, I don't depart from the truth as a way to gain the person's sense that now I'm a trustworthy because I've come to the position of departing from the truth, and now you're okay. But it's the mode of goodness, it's purity, where speaking the truth palatably that's the challenge of our lives. And showing the person that you're committed to the person, genuinely, not cosmetically, but genuinely, and with different measured messages. Here's truth and here's illusion, and you know what happiness comes from truth, and you know what else comes from illusion, and my interest is the side of truth. And if there is some mistake in calibrating what the person can digest, then you're ready to cover that ground and, whatever is necessary. Because the relationship is more important, but truth is also an essence of that relationship. So I don't want to depart from the truth, but I don't want to depart from the relationship. It's a challenge. I mean, this is what we're speaking about in our mentor meeting, when we're trying, according to the best that Krishna gives us, to extend. That means, the protection for us is that we're in touch with as much as we can be to touch with the truth, which is a big part of hearing the scripture, discussing the scripture, the nectar of the scripture coming through that katayanta shamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha, through discussion of topics together, as we're doing right now, then the truth arises, and trust arises, and happiness arises, and loving relationships, and so on. Even if there is some, on this side or that side, or both sides, some discrepancy, the truth will arise. Because Krishna is pleased. We're out of time. You have 9.5 minutes. We don't have time.
मम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। I would like to seek the blessings of my spiritual master and all the assembled Vaishnavas so that I can speak something meaningful. Just 9 minutes for my purification. I would like to read a section from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 16th chapter. And I would like to cover the topic, how Krishna takes it when an offense is committed to a devotee, and what is the proper way of praising a devotee or appreciating a devotee. So this section is from the situation when Jay and Vijay were cursed by the 4 Kumaras when they were checked by the 2 doorkeepers when they were about to enter the 7th gate of Vaikuntha. So after that dialogue has taken place between the 4 Kumaras and the 2 doorkeepers, the Lord of Vaikuntha, he himself arrives there. So Prabhupada describes that the 2 lotus feet that the 4 Kumaras wanted to behold, the Lord came with those 2 lotus feet in front of them to address the situation. So here is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead speaks. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "These attendants of mine, Jay and Vijay by the name, have committed a great offense against you because of ignoring me. O great sages, I approve of the punishment that you, who are devoted to me, have meted out to them. To me, the Brahmana is the highest and most beloved personality. The disrespect shown by my attendants has actually been displayed by me, because the doormen are my servitors. I take this to be an offense by myself. Therefore, I seek your forgiveness for the incident that has arisen. A wrong act committed by a servant leads people in general to blame his master, just as a spot of white leprosy on any part of the body pollutes all of the skin." I would like to read just the first paragraph of Srila Prabhupada's purport to the second verse. Prabhupada writes, "To commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord is a great wrong. Even when a living entity is promoted to Vaikuntha, there is still a chance that he may commit offenses. But the difference is that when one is in a Vaikuntha planet, even if by chance one commits an offense, he is protected by the Lord. This is the remarkable fact in the dealings of the Lord and the servitor, as seen in the present incident concerning Jay and Vijay. The word atikramam used herein indicates that in offending a devotee, one neglects the Supreme Lord himself. So I wanted to focus on this particular line, that when there is an offense committed to a devotee, behind that is a disconnected vision, where one is not able to see things connected with the Supreme Lord. And likewise, the proper kind of glorification is when we are able to see things connected with the Supreme Lord. So, I would like to refer to Prahlad Maharaj's prayer again. The specific prayer that I have been meditating on for a while is this verse. Manya dhana abhijana rupa tapashruta ajas teja prabhava bala paurusha buddhi yoga na aradhanaya hi bhavanti parasya punso bhaktya tutosha gaja yuthapaya. So in this verse, Prahlad Maharaj is saying that I consider the different qualifications like dhana or wealth, abhijana or good birth, a high elevated birth, rupa or having physical beauty, tapa, austerity, shruta, having great knowledge, ojas means sensory prowess, then teja or having luster, prabhava, having influence over others, then bala means having physical strength, paurusha having diligence, buddhi having intelligence, and yoga being following some process of connecting with the Supreme Lord. And na aradhanaya hi bhavanti parasya punso. And even one is worshipping the deity. So all these different qualifications are useless unless there is one ingredient that is present, which is bhakti. So Krishna is only pleased by bhakti. Bhaktya tutosha gaja yuthapaya. Just like the Gajendra, who does not seem to have any other, any qualification, like Maharaj would say, what beauty a Gajendra would have. But still, the Lord was pleased by his attitude of devotion in the heart. And as Prematarani Mataji was so beautifully explaining, that bhakti is coming from a devotee. So all the manifestations of qualities that we may be seeing in others, unless we are able to see in connection with the Supreme Lord how it is a product of bhakti, then it becomes, that kind of glorification becomes incomplete, or it is somewhat of an insult to a devotee. So the proper way of glorification of a devotee should be in relation to Guru and Krishna, trying to see how those qualities are being personally invested by the Supreme Lord, by the agency of the spiritual master. And likewise, when we are not able to see that connection, those qualifications are just products of good karma or pious karma. So I am trying to make this distinction that one may be decorated with varieties of qualities which are products of good karma versus the qualities which are coming out as a product of one's bhakti, or the spiritual master placing those qualities in the devotee. So when one is able to be in tune with the specific qualities of the devotee, and one praises that, but keeping in mind that it's because of the bhakti that is present in the heart of the devotee that he is being endowed with more and more such qualities, which is going to enhance the services of that particular devotee. And likewise, when we are not able to see the Supreme Lord behind, we are neglecting the Supreme Lord, and that eventually results in actually offending that devotee. So this is the simple thing that I was meditating on in this context I wanted to share. I think the time is up. Thank you very much. Yeah, I would like to see if there is any question. I would rather address those.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I was just thinking the Kumara's course, Jai and Vijay, and I was just thinking also, say, Narada Muni course,
Manigriva
and Nalakuvara. And when Narada Muni course, I was thinking, let me do something for the benefit. When the Kumara's course, it was, like, these rascals, they don't deserve to be here. So, in one sense, we can see that the Kumaras also it could be taken that they committed an offense by disconnecting these devotees with the Supreme Lord. So, the distinction of, not from the side of praising, you say, we maintain the connection, but sometimes, some superior person may chastise and punish, but, that also maintaining that connection, so the beneficial part of the punishment is there. It's always looking at the benefits, so maybe you can comment about that.
I was thinking that although externally it may look like that the Kumaras are coming from the place of sort of false ego that you disrespected us or you checked our entrance, although we are qualified. I think that's how the externalities appear to be. But behind any kind of gesture of a pure devotee, which, as I can understand by hearing, is that well-wishing of the persons that they are dealing with. So although externally it may appear to be a curse, but behind that curse there is some well-wishing from their side, which did not become so apparent in this context. But all I'm trying to say is that there are some unspoken aspects which are there, which we can take it for granted because they are the pure devotees of the Lord. And therefore, nothing could be coming from the place of revenge or taking back kind of mentality or trying to... that's my understanding. I would like to request Sri Master if he would like to correct me.
When they're speaking, there's several verses in chapter 15 where they're speaking and they say, you should be punished in a manner that is apt, appropriate. And what is appropriate is so that they become qualified. They wish that they become qualified to be in this place where there's complete harmony. That's their wish. Not just like, get out of here. But so they can be qualified. And it's just repeated in 2 verses and then again in the purport. So it's not, the external is, and then there's in their language, there's they wish that they're wishing them well. Besides, like tidying up the spiritual world that's got these, people that don't belong here. Ooh. You have a question?
To turn the topic, you were quoting that verse of Prahlad Maharaj and making a distinction between endowments that come by karma and endowments that come by bhakti. How does one distinguish between the two? For example, a devotee might suddenly get a lot of wealth, just for the sake of discussion, wealth. So how does one know whether this wealth has come from karma or by bhakti?
I was trying to make a distinction between devotees and non-devotees. In the case of devotees, there is already some resources which are coming by dint of his past pious activities. But because of trying to see things connected to Krishna and then engaging them in Krishna's service, what happens is that more and more, depending on the specific circumstances, they are gifted with the resources that are needed to serve Krishna. So I was making a distinction between, like, from the point that one has contacted the descending mercy, one starts getting filled with more and more things which are needed for service to be executed. But in the case of non-devotees, because they are just within the purview of matter, so they are basically getting whatever they are due by karmic reaction. They're completely under the control of the material energy. So the reason I quoted that verse was more towards just trying to see that from our perspective, when we are looking to another Vaishnava, we see that although there could be certain qualifications or certain resources which are coming from past pious activities, but from the moment that soul has contacted descending mercy, there is a switch, or there is a different source, or there is a direct control of Krishna, or through the agency of the spiritual master, those things are coming. So I was making that distinction. I don't know whether I addressed.
Suppose a devotee is born rich and he has contacted a Vaishnava. He still has money. It came from his karmic.
Right.
What would you say in that?
So that's what I'm saying. So there could be a situation that, like, the Vaishnava already had some assets which are coming because of the pious karma. But from the point that the devotee is further advancing in Krishna consciousness, or met the pure devotee of the Lord, either the taking off of that wealth or giving more wealth is dependent on what is needful for the service of the devotee. That's how I am seeing it.
If I may add to it, maybe where I was, leading you, if you don't mind, was the distinction is in the consciousness, how one uses or views those assets. In the absence of bhakti, those assets, whenever they come, either one is born with or as they come, are meant for, sense gratification, as we say. And the element of bhakti moves one from sense gratification towards utilizing in Krishna's service. Yes. That's the bhakti feature.
The way that this discussion is going, I was thinking of Ambarish Prabhu, our Prabhupada disciple, Ambarish Prabhu. And he has both. He speaks of his wealth as the hard-earned money of my forefathers. And on the other, so I can't frivolously, I'm responsible to use it in a careful way. And then there's the bhakti element also. And that is, it's entirely, very carefully to be used for Krishna service. And aside from his very generous donations for the Temple of Vedic Planetarium and many other things that he's given, he invests money in this thing and that thing and the other thing, because that's part of his, bhav. It's part of what he does. And just like a little detail, this is what somebody told me. He didn't tell me that Ford Motor Company was, everything crashed, and he had a big part to play in helping Ford Motor Company, really pick up, record growth and so on and so on. It was a big part of it was his. So he has a karma. He has an ability to do that, but he's using it all for Krishna service. So it's not. So where it comes from is less important than the consciousness that's behind it, which is the point that you were making. These things are useless without bhakti, and these things are useful. It's the one before the so many zeros. I think we're out of time. Thank you all very much. It's been very lively. discussion? The recording of this should go on our website. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki.